Did not personally remove those items from the trash bag, no.
You did not remove any of the items?
Personally, no.
Were they removed in your presence?
The blood sample was, yes.
Well, who removed items 15 and 16 from the trash bag?
Those were removed later. I'm not sure if it was myself or Mr. Fong did it later.
When you say later, you mean in the afternoon after you came back from the Bronco?
I'm not sure. It was sometime on the 14th, but I'm not sure when.
But you do recall in the morning when you first got there that Mr. Fong removed, I'm sorry, did you say you removed the blood vial in the gray envelope, or that Mr. Fong did?
Mr. Fong.
In your presence?
Yes, I was there.
Now, you've also said that you've watched portions of this trial either on TV or listened to it on the radio. Is that correct?
Bits and pieces, yes.
And are you aware, Ms. Mazzola, that 2 weeks ago on April 12th, Dennis Fung testified that he carried the blood sample to the crime scene truck either in a paper bag, the posse box, or by itself?
This is irrelevant. Calls for hearsay.
Sustained.
Ms. Mazzola, one second. Your Honor, may I please have a sidebar on this particular question, on this line?
Ms. Mazzola, are you aware of Mr. Fung's testimony regarding the collection of the blood vial envelope?
No, I don't believe I watched it or listened to it.
All right. Has anybody discussed that with you?
I don't believe so, no.
Proceed.
Well, at any point prior to Mr. Fung's testimony on April 12th, did you tell anyone in the district attorney's office that you realized on the morning of June 14th that you had carried the blood sample out of Rockingham in a trash bag?
Calls for hearsay.
Overruled.
No, I don't believe so.
You testified on redirect examination yesterday that you had an independent recollection of carrying a trash bag out of Rockingham even before seeing the videotape. Is that right?
Yes.
And you also testified that you figured out on the morning of June 14th that you had carried the vial of blood out of Rockingham in that trash bag. Is that right?
Yes.
And you say that you came to realize on the morning of June 14th that you took items 15 and 16 out of the trash bag. I'm sorry, withdrawn. And you also said yesterday that when you were shown the gray envelope, you were able to see the time on it as well, time of collection. Is that right?
There was a time on it, yes.
Well, what you saw on the 14th was a statement in Dennis Fung's handwriting that said received with a date and a time of 5:20 in the afternoon or 17:20 hours.
I'm not sure what all it said.
At this point in time, you're not sure.
Yes, at this point in time. Might refresh your recollection as to what time you observed if you actually saw a photograph of that envelope. At what time I observed on the envelope itself, or
No, of the time that was written on the envelope that you observed on the 14th, if I showed you now a photograph of the gray envelope.
Do you understand the question?
Not really.
Would a photograph of the gray envelope,
Right.
which reflects Mr. Fung's notations as to when it was collected, would that refresh your recollections as to what you saw there?
I remember seeing the gray envelope in the writing.
I'm sorry, you said,
I remember seeing the gray envelope and writing.
next to, could we have 184A, please?
Mr. Robinson, do you have that handy?
Let me just show you, Ms. Mazzola, what is Prosecution's Exhibit 184. I ask you to take a look at that, whether it refreshes your recollection as to the writing that you claim to have seen on the morning of June 14th when the gray envelope was removed from the garbage bag.
Objection to the word claim, this argument is.
Sustain. Rephrase the question.
Does seeing that photograph refresh your recollection as to what it is you say you saw on the morning of the 14th?
It looks like what I saw. I just saw the writing.
Okay. And the writing you saw said that it was received by Mr. Fung, right?
Well, received from Detective Van Adder.
And that's in Dennis Fung's handwriting?
It looks like his signature. I'm not very familiar with his handwriting.
Looks like his signature, though.
Yes.
And there's a time on it, right?
Yes.
1720 hours?
Looks like 1720.
And it's a date?
Yes.
The date is June 13th, 1994, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. And you're absolutely sure, as you sit here today, Ms. Mazzola, that you came to this realization about having carried the blood vial on the morning of June 14th, long before you viewed the videotape?
Yes.
When was the first time that you told anyone at all about realizing that you had carried the blood sample out of Rockingham and back to the laboratory in a trash bag?
Asked and answered in recess.
Hold on.
I don't remember when. It was not a big deal, so I don't remember.
Well, was it in the last 3 months?
I don't remember.
Was it in the fall?
I don't remember.
Was it during one of the prep sessions with the district attorney?
I don't remember when.
All right, I think we've covered
Okay.
it.
Remember when it was the first time you, I asked you before about the first time you told anyone. Do you remember the first time you told the prosecutor? Same answer?
Same answer.
Well, 2 weeks ago, ma'am, on or around April 12th, did any prosecutor ask you about your recollection as to who carried the blood sample out of Rockingham and as to how it was carried?
That might have been asked.
But as you sit here today, you have no recollection whether any prosecutor asked you on or about April 12th, whether you had a recollection as to how the blood vial was carried out of Rockingham, and if so, by whom?
I had talked to them on and off. I don't recall exactly what we all talked about.
And you don't recall whether or not this was even talked about at all, do you?
It could have been. I don't remember.
But as you sit here today, you
Wait.
have no independent record.
Wait.
Sorry.
Let her finish the answer. Don't cut her off, please.
Sorry, Mr.
Oh. Be my guest.
As you sit here today, you have no independent recollection of having said that to any of the prosecutors on or about April 12th of 1995.
Things to that.
Oh,
I'm not sure of the date. We may have talked about it. I'm not positive.
1 second. You said that you don't remember the first time you told the prosecutors that you had carried out the blood vial in that black trash bag. But whenever that time was, Ms. Mazzola, did the prosecutors seem surprised or elated by that remark by you?
No.
Now, on November 22nd, at a restaurant, you had a meeting where your boss, Michelle Kessler, was present, correct?
She was present at a meeting at a restaurant, yes.
And there were 2 investigators from the district attorney's office present at that meeting as well.
Yes.
And during the course of that discussion, the subject of Detective Van Adder giving the vial of Mr. Simpson's blood arose, didn't it?
This has been asked against.
sustain. We've already gone through this.
But went into a redirect with us, which we-
We've already gone through this, Counsel.
I have a sidebar, Your Honor. There's a new issue related to this that came up, I believe.
Nope. Proceed.
Well, if you
can make-
recall
you
on
can make-
redirect,
Excuse me, you can make your record at the noon break.
do you recall, Ms. Mazzola, Mr. Goldberg on redirect asking you a question about handling the evidence versus carrying it?
Yes.
And didn't you tell the detectives on November 22nd that you never handled the blood vial?
This has been asked.
I'm not exactly sure remembering what I told them. It's been a while.
Well, did Miss Michelle Kessler at any point during that interview ask you to clarify the difference between handling the blood vial and carrying the blood vial?
I don't remember if she did or not.
Do you recall Miss Kessler actually specifically asking you, not the detectives now, quote, did you ever handle O.J.'s vial of blood, unquote?
She might have. I don't remember.
And if she had asked you that, Ms. Mazzola, given the distinction that you gave to this jury between handle and carry, would your answer to that question be no, or would it be yes?
Calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Also estimation.
Ms. Mazzola, you said that you learned that that meeting had been tape recorded. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. Take a look at this and see if it refreshes your recollection as to what you said.
This has been asked and answered. Your Honor, we need to approach before he does
No,
this.
we don't. It's for purposes of refreshing her recollection.
This is something that they did not provide to us in discovery.
Your Honor, this
Hold
is
on.
now a speaking objection.
Both of you are doing it, Counsel. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our recess for the afternoon, for the morning session, actually, right now. Get you started on your shortened lunch hour. Please remember all my admonitions to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourself, form any opinions about the case. Don't discuss the matter with anybody else. Conduct any deliberations till the matter has been submitted to you. See you back here at 1 o'clock. Ms. Mazzola, you may step down. You're ordered to return at 1 o'clock. Thank you.
to the defense's discovery. There was no duty on the defense to give it back to the prosecution. It's a
Oh,
prior
hold on,
statement by this
hold on,
witness.
hold on. What's the objection?
Well, my objection, Your Honor, is that they created a transcript, which could qualify as work product, and normally would, unless they're going to use it, which he now intends to do. I don't have that transcript. This tape is extremely difficult to hear, because the audio is poor and there's a lot of background noise. And if they're going to use this to refresh your recollection, then I'm entitled to it. If he doesn't want to use it, fine. Maybe counsel doesn't know, but in this county, there is basically an informal practice by most attorneys that although technically transcribing a tape is work product and not something that we have to turn over, that we do turn over transcripts. He may not know that because he does not practice here, but at any rate, once he wants to use it, at that point, we're entitled to a copy, we're entitled to sit down and determine whether it's correct.
I actually would be more than happy to listen to the tape to refresh your recollection. I was actually just trying to save time.
All right, do you have any objection to providing Mr. Goldberg with a copy of the pages you intend on using out of this transcript?
Not at all.
All right, then would it help if you had talked about this over the lunch hour?
Well,
I actually suggest, excuse me, no, you didn't ask me for the transcript. What I suggested to Mr.
All right.
Goldberg,
Well,
after they hear the tape.
counsel, if you're willing to share it, then there's no issue, is there?
Right.
Sure, take a look.
Which part do you want to read?
You know, it'd be thrilling if you guys talked about this stuff over the lunch hour rather than taking the jury time to do this.
Basically, what the counsel has pointed out to me is identical to what the witness has already testified to. So, I don't,
I'm sorry.
and the court already gave very limited rulings on this, so I don't know why we're going over this all over again.
Goldberg was misstating the record. She said she didn't remember saying these statements to them, and I now wanted to show her the actual statements to see if it refreshes her recollection.
All right, and that's the purpose for which it'll be allowed. All right,
At
let's
this
have the
point,
jury.
yeah, I may have to at some point call a detective, but not, I can't put it into this witness. I accept that.
All right, thank you. Let's have the jurors. record reflect, we've been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. All right, Ms. Andrea Mazzola is again on the witness stand undergoing cross-examination by Mr. Neufeld. Mr. Neufeld. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Mazzola, good afternoon. You're reminded you're still under oath.
Good afternoon.
Proceed.
Good afternoon, Ms. Mazzola.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hi. Hi. Ms. Mazzola, right before lunch, I asked you a series of questions about what you said and was said to you at a meeting held on November 22nd, 1994, at which investigators from the district attorney's office and your boss, Michelle Kessler, were present. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay, and you recall having that meeting with those people?
I remember meeting with those people, yes.
And at that meeting, there was a discussion about your involvement in this case. It's one of the things that was discussed.
Well, we've been over this. We've been over this.
Ms. Mazzola, I'd like you to simply look at this item, see if it refreshes your recollection to certain things that you said. I'd like you to begin reading this portion of the transcript here. All the way
You may.
to here. Now, during that meeting on December 14th, you didn't tell the detectives, did you, that you realized on the morning of June 14th that you had unknowingly carried the blood sample out of Rockingham in a trash bag, did you?
December 14th?
No, June 14th, sorry. At a November 22nd meeting,
Restate the question. Restate the question.
isn't it a fact that during the November 22nd meeting with the investigators from the DA's office and Ms. Kessler, that you didn't tell them that you realized on the morning of June 14th that you had unknowingly carried the blood sample out of Rockingham in a trash bag?
Sustain.
Well, didn't you tell the detectives that you could only assume that Van Adder had come up and given the vial to Dennis Fung because you weren't there then?
It's irrelevant.
At that meeting on November 22nd, in response to a specific question from Michelle Kessler, quote, "Did you ever handle O.J.'s vial of blood?" unquote, didn't you answer her no?
I object to an answer.
Overruled.
I honestly cannot remember what I said at that meeting.
Having shown you this portion transcript, does it refresh your recollection?
It doesn't, I'm sorry.
In the discussion you had on November 22nd with the detectives and Ms. Kessler, were you deliberately trying to distance yourself from the whole subject of what happened to Mr. Simpson's blood vial?
No.
In fact, when telling the detectives the extent to which you were involved with the evidence since the morning of June 13th, did you not tell the detectives during that meeting that, quote, "It wasn't my job to analyze any part of it, I didn't want to know anything about it," unquote? Did you say that to the detectives?
Sustained. Also assumes facts not in evidence. Also misstates the evidence.
Did you say to the detectives at the June 22nd meeting,
Sustained.
putting aside the quotation marks, didn't you inform the detectives
Sustained.
to this entire line, Your Honor?
No, you're
Okay.
asking the wrong question here, counsel.
Did you ever say to the detectives during that meeting,
Sustained. Are there any detectives at this meeting, counsel?
I'm sorry, investigators from the district attorney's office?
Big difference.
And I appreciate that difference then. Okay. The meeting on November 22nd, did you say to Michelle Kessler and to District Attorney, investigators, senior investigators, Michael Stevens and Dana Thompson, quote, "It wasn't my job to analyze any part of it. I didn't want to know anything about it."
Hearsay, not inconsistent.
Overruled.
I might have.
Having shown you this portion of the transcript, does it refresh your recollection as to whether you in fact did? Would you like to see that portion again?
I see it on the paper, but
Hold on. She gets to answer the question, counsel.
I still actually do not remember saying that.
All right, let's proceed.
I make a motion to strike the witness's answer.
Overruled.
I saw it on the paper.
Overruled.
Now, you testified on redirect examination that the most time-consuming portion of the process of evidence collection is to properly document and photograph the items being collected, as opposed to the actual physical collection. Is that correct?
Yes?
And two of the items that you collected late in the day were items 15 and 16. Do you have those?
203 and 204.
I ask you to please reopen prosecution's exhibit. Doesn't even have a number on it. I'm sorry, number is?
203 and 204. 203 being item
Right.
15, 204 being item 16. All right, the witness has cut through the sealing tape on the envelope.
And could you please examine what you've listed as item 15, please? And it's an airline ticket, correct?
It appears to be yes.
Okay. And just so there's no surprise about it, it's a used airline ticket, is it not?
Irrelevant.
Overruled.
Yes.
And it has a date on it, doesn't it?
Let's see.
Does it have a date of June 10th on it?
A return flight, yes.
And it's not, has nothing to do with New York and with Chicago to Los Angeles, does it?
What's best evidence?
Overruled. Is there any dispute as to what the airline ticket says?
Doesn't appear to be.
Thank you.
Don't forget, we have an airline expert witness on the jury.
Okay. And by the way, item 16, is item 16 a luggage ticket for the same flight?
I'd have to check and make sure it was the same flight.
Although you have a layperson reading airline documents.
I know. All right.
Yeah, it appears to be for the 10th.
Now, before items 15 and 16 could be collected by you and Dennis Fung on the afternoon of the 13th, they had to be documented, didn't they? Just like other items.
Yes?
And part of that documentation process entails photographing them, correct?
Yes?
And so these items were photographed in their original state before they were picked up by you, correct?
I don't recall if they were or not.
Well, if they had been photographed, Ms. Mazzola, the first thing you would do is you'd bring over the photographer, correct? The forensic photographer.
Correct?
And the next thing you would do is you would document the location of the item someplace in writing?
It's vague and it's misstated testimony as to would do.
Overruled.
Yes?
And you would document with,
This is an improper hypothetical.
Overruled. Proceed.
and you would document the location in writing where the objects are, correct?
Correct?
And you would make that documentation in your field notes, correct?
Correct?
And then you would take out a photo ID card and you would set it near the object, correct?
Correct?
And you would instruct the forensic photographer to photograph it, correct?
It's still based when he's talking about these items or a hypothetical.
Overruled. We're talking about these two items, correct?
Yes.
Proceed.
Yes?
And you would do that first, you said item 15 was the first one collected?
Item 16.
Item 16 was the first item collected. And if these two items were both photographed, they would both be photographed prior to the collection, is that correct?
Yes?
And all those different steps would occur prior to the actual collection, right?
Yes?
And would it be fair to say that if that happened here, that process takes anywhere from what, 5 to 10 minutes? Is that a fair estimate?
In this case, probably less.
Okay, approximately how long, ma'am? That's just as best you can approximate. To do the documentation, to get the photographer, to get the cards set up, to photograph them.
Probably just a few minutes.
Few minutes. And then you collect them, correct?
Correct?
Then after you collect them, you said that both items were handed to you.
Yes?
And after they were both handed to you, you said you walked into the kitchen, is that right?
I believe I was around the kitchen area.
And is the kitchen area next to the foyer?
Yes?
So you could have been either in the foyer or the kitchen, you're not sure?
I'm not sure which one.
And you remained there for a few more minutes, waiting for a garbage bag to be produced, is that correct?
I'm not sure how many minutes it was.
Well, approximately how long was it that you waited in that foyer kitchen area before you got a garbage bag?
It wasn't too long.
Approximately how long? Approximately how many minutes, ma'am?
I wouldn't hazard a guess.
Well, just give us your best estimate.
Maybe 5 minutes or so.
Okay, so you waited there approximately 5 minutes, you received a trash bag, and you said that you then put items 15 and 16 in this black trash bag, is that right?
Correct?
And do you have a recollection at that same time of putting the different photo ID numbers in the trash bag?
I don't think I put those in personally.
Did you see them put in the bag?
I don't recall.
So the photo ID numbers are something that Dennis Fung could have put into the bag after you left the bag on the foyer floor?
Also speculation.
Sustained. Rephrase the question.
Well, when you, one moment. You say, however, that as you sit here today, you don't have a present recollection of ever photographing items 15 and 16?
No, because the detectives were not interested in them as evidence. They just wanted them collected.
Court's permission, I'd like to put exhibit number 1107 up on the Elmo.
All right, defense 1107.
Ms. Mazzola, do you recognize this document as the evidence collection list for Rockingham that day, June
Yes.
13th?
Yes,
And this was the list that was filled out by you, correct?
by myself and Mr. Fung, yes.
And do you notice in the first column, it has you're supposed to put in the sample number, correct?
Correct?
And the sample number could be different than the item number, could it not?
Yes,
And so at that point, what you were using as a sample number were ID photo numbers, isn't that right?
correct?
And the next column says I period D period photo, right?
Correct?
And that column is there so you can indicate whether or not a photograph was taken of the object before it was collected, isn't that right?
Yes,
Now, I'd like you to look down items 15 and 16 at the bottom of the page. Those are the last two entries you made on that page. Do you see where it says 15 and 16 at the bottom?
yes,
And do you see the column where it says photo ID?
yes,
And you checked off that a photo ID had been made for items 15 and item 16, correct?
yes,
And now that you've seen those check marks for photo IDs for 15 and 16, does that refresh your recollection that in fact photographs were taken at the scene of those two items?
I have not seen any photographs of those two items.
Didn't ask you whether you've seen any photographs of those two items. I asked you whether, by looking at your own field note, and the fact that you personally had checked off photo ID next to items 15 and 16, does that refresh your recollection as to whether or not photographs were taken of items 15 and 16 while you were at the Rockingham residence?
According to the notes, photos were taken. Independent recollection, I can't say.
Well, in fact, those are your check marks. You wrote those check marks in, didn't you, ma'am?
Yes,
Would you have written check marks in the box that says that a photo was taken if a photo hadn't been taken?
if I had assumed that one had been taken, they would be checked, yes.
I mean, you would make an entry in this report about something which you did not factually know to be correct, just because you would assume that it must have happened?
It's argumentative. Rephrase the question.
A moment. Next in order would be
1122.
There's actually two of them.
All right, 1122 and 1123. (1122) number 1, the perspective shot. Number 1123 will be the close-up shot.
Zola, do you recognize what's in that photograph? Oops. Do you recognize what's in that photograph?
It's a little hard to see exactly what it is.
Well, seeing that photograph of that bench, do you have any idea what's sitting on that bench?
I know that item 16 was recovered from a bench,
But you can't tell from that picture.
not from,
Can you see a card that says 16 on it?
I see a card, but the
All right.
picture's a little,
Now I'm going to be showing you when it's 1123, Your Honor. Now this is a close-up, is it not, of the same shot?
it appears to be yes.
And you now know what the item is?
Yes, it is item 16.
And that's a card next to it that says item 16, correct?
Correct.
Now, having seen the photograph with the card in it of item 16 and the luggage ticket, which is item 16, does this now refresh your recollection as to whether or not you had forensic photographs taken of the items 15 and 16 that day?
I personally do not remember standing there watching the photograph being taken.
You collected item 16,
I
didn't
collected
you?
item 16, yes.
Wait. We're both doing this again. Let him finish answering the question. And Mr. Neufeld, 3 times already this afternoon, you've cut her off again.
I know you had mentioned that one of the best ways for you to refresh your recollection is by looking at photographs. Is that right?
In some instances, yes.
I know you said that with respect to the gate, seeing the photograph of the gate did not refresh your recollection that the gate was there. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, how about this photograph with item 16 in it, seeing the luggage ticket, which became item 16? Seeing that photograph now, does that refresh your recollection about whether this item was photographed by a forensic photographer on the afternoon of June 13th, 1994?
Seeing this photograph, it would have to have been photographed by a forensic photographer.
But it doesn't refresh your recollection as to whether or not you actually saw it being photographed.
No.
You can print that also, yes. And, Mr. Mazzola, you said that items 15 and 16, you put it into the trash bag, is that right?
Yes.
And the next day, in the afternoon, they were removed from the trash bag
Yes.
by Mr. Fung or by you?
I can't remember which one of us physically removed them from the trash bag.
Do you remember seeing them being removed? Do you have independent recollection as you sit here today?
I remember seeing them in the trash bag at the lab. I don't remember seeing them removed.
Well, Ms. Mazzola, showing you the actual envelopes that item 15 and 16 are in, isn't it a fact, Ms. Mazzola, that those envelopes, that you had those envelopes in your presence at the time that items 15 and 16 were photographed and collected?
No.
Is it possible, Ms. Mazzola, that just like you don't remember items 15 and 16 being photographed, that you don't remember these envelopes actually being present with you when the items were collected?
Argument it
Well, Ms. Mazzola, you don't know whether it was you or Dennis Fung who removed these two items from the trash bag on the 14th, is that right?
Yes,
Isn't it a fact, Ms. Mazzola, that on item 15, Dennis Fung wrote his initials on it?
yes,
And isn't it a fact, ma'am, that on item 16, you wrote your initials on it?
yes,
And isn't it the reason that your initials are on 16 is because you collected 16?
that I packaged 16.
Ms. Mazzola, isn't it a fact that the reason your initials appear on 16 is, as you testified earlier, you personally collected it, you physically picked it up?
Ask and answer.
Sustained.
Isn't it a fact, Ms. Mazzola, that the reason that Dennis Fung's initials appear on item 15 is because he collected item 15 at the Rockingham house?
He collected 15, but he also packaged 15 if his initials are on it.
So it's your testimony that it just so happens that your initials are on 16 and his initials are on 15, not because you each collected those respective items, but because you happened to package one at the laboratory and he happened to package the other?
That's correct.
And Ms. Mazzola, isn't it a fact that in your lab box, you not only carry coin envelopes, basically the size shown here for 15 and 16, but you also carry other manila envelopes, such as the one I have in my left hand,
In the kits,
in the kits?
yes,
The one you're holding in your left hand, what's the size of that?
We
Should
probably-
be written on the bottom of the bag. Turn it over, down at the bottom. What's it say?
Just what does it say on the seal?
Does it have a size designation?
Oh, no, I don't see one.
All right. Give me an estimate for the record. Give me an estimate for the record.
Well, Ms. Mazzola, what would be your estimate of the size of this envelope? I'm holding it in my right hand.
I don't know, maybe 7 by 11, 8 by 11, something like that.
Might be a bit smaller, perhaps?
It's possible.
Could be 6 or 7 by 9 or so?
It's possible.
Okay. And you said that after you had been standing in the kitchen for 5 or so minutes with Dennis Fung, that you then took the bag with items 15 and 16 in it, and you walked into the foyer, is that right?
I received the bag after 5 minutes or so.
And after you received the bag after 5 minutes or so, did you continue to stand in the kitchen foyer area with Dennis Fung for some period of time before putting the bag down?
I was in that area for a short period of time, yes.
And approximately how long were you in that area after you received the plastic bag?
I'm not sure exactly how long.
I'm not asking you to be sure, ma'am, just give me your best approximation.
I couldn't even approximate. I wasn't looking at my watch.
Well, is it closer to 2 or 3 minutes or closer to 10 minutes? How long approximately?
It was more than 2 or 3 minutes, but other than that, I'm not sure.
So would it be fair to say that, now that you know, by the way, that 15 and 16, or at least 16 were photographed, that had these items been photographed, which I think you said takes a few minutes to set up and actually document, is that a fair statement?
Oh.
A few minutes, yes, not many.
And then you said that you were in the kitchen for approximately 5 minutes waiting for with Dennis Fung until you got the bag, is that right?
Approximately.
And then you said it was another few minutes, more than 2, but you said less than 10, that you continued to talk to Dennis Fung or stand near Dennis Fung before going to the living room, correct?
I don't believe I said it was less than 10. I said it was more than 2 or 3.
Fine. Well, was it close to 5 perhaps?
I do not know.
Somewhere between 2 and 3 and 5, would that be a fair estimate?
I don't know.
But more than 2 or 3?
More than 2 or 3.
Okay. So just those 3 times alone, we're talking about a period of about perhaps 10 minutes or so before you went into the living room. Is that your testimony?
Could be a little more than that.
Okay, perhaps as much as 12 minutes or so?
Sustain.
Now, it's your testimony on direct examination that there came a time when you walked into the living room after leaving the bag, trash bag, on the foyer, and you sat down on the couch, and that you have an independent recollection that you closed your eyes. Is that correct?
Yes.
I want you to take a look carefully, Ms. Mazzola, at the at this videotape that we received in evidence, which is time-coded. One moment.
And Mr. Harris, which exhibit is this?
It's 1712. Go fast forward. No, just fast forward to 1712 to when they're about to go back in. Showing them going in. Okay, could you just back up a second? Now, a little bit more to the fan. Stop. Well. Now, according to the tape, it's approximately 1712 when you begin to walk back into the Rockingham house, having made that first trip out to the van. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Could you continue, please? And according to this tape, do you recognize that gentleman in the picture?
In the
Not the
suit?
one in the blue uniform, the one in the gray suit?
Yes.
And who was that?
Detective Van Adder.
All right. And according to the tape, he's arriving at approximately 1717. Is that right?
Yes.
About 5 minutes after you finished packing up the van and began heading back to the house.
Approximately.
Go. Stop. Stop there. Now, you recognize the gentleman on the left as Dennis Fung.
Yes.
And Dennis Fung seems to be holding some objects, correct?
Correct.
And what is the time?
1718.
Now, Ms. Mazzola,
It's actually 171857 because you need the precise frame
thank you.
at 1400s. Proceed.
Would you agree that if at 1712 you started walking back into the house, by 1718, Dennis Fung is standing in the foyer with an object which has been purported to be the blood vial envelope? Would you agree that that period of time is 6 minutes approximately, or 6.5 minutes, from when you started walking back into the house to the image in this frame?
Approximately, yes.
And you said a moment ago, ma'am, that when you and Dennis Fung returned to the house from the van, first thing that was done was that items 16 and 15 were collected. Is that right?
When we got back there, yes.
And that to collect them, they first had to be documented, correct?
correct.
And you said that took a few minutes, correct?
To document an item, yes.
Right. And then you said that after they were documented and collected, that you stood with Dennis Fung for about 5 minutes in the kitchen foyer area waiting to receive the trash bag, correct?
I believe I said approximately 5 minutes or so.
And you said that after you received the trash bag, Ms. Mazzola, that it was at least 2 minutes more that you waited with Dennis Fung before walking into the living room, correct?
I was in the general vicinity, yes.
And so, ma'am, I think you also said a little while ago, therefore, that it was at least 10 minutes that you were with Dennis Fung, either processing these 2 items or standing with him with the trash bag, before you put the trash bag down in the foyer and walked into the living room. Isn't that correct?
Sustained.
Didn't you testify that it was at least 10 minutes from the time you began to document and photograph and collect items 15 and 16 until you left the trash bag in the foyer and went into the living room?
Sustained.
Well, Ms. Mazzola, by your own estimates in the last few minutes, wouldn't you agree that more than 10 minutes passed from the time you re-entered Rockingham and began the collection process of items 15 and 16 until the time that you went into the living room to sit on the couch?
Overruled.
I believed I was giving estimates. It could have been 1 or 2 or even 3 minutes off.
Ms. Mazzola, but given the estimates that you gave, not that I gave, but that you gave, by those estimates, wasn't it at least 10 minutes from the time that you first went into Rockingham to collect items 15 and 16 until you left the bag on the foyer and went into the living room and closed your eyes?
Argumentative, false speculation.
Overruled.
By your estimates that you just gave.
Being off a couple of minutes to a few minutes, could be anywhere from 6 minutes to 10 minutes.
Ms. Mazzola, a few minutes ago, before I showed you the KABC tape, didn't you say it was at least 10 minutes?
Sustained. I think we spent enough time on this, counsel.
Okay, you can stop the tape. Now, Ms. Mazzola, I think you testified on direct examination that by this point in the day you were very tired. Is that right?
I
It
was,
had been a long day.
I was tired, yes.
And during the course of your examination, would it be fair to say that when I asked you about certain item numbers, it was frequently necessary for you to refer to your notes to see what item number a particular object was?
Overruled.
Yes.
And during the course of June 13th, you collected many different items. Is that right?
Yes.
And in fact, you had a different set of numbers for the items you were collecting at Bundy from the items you were collecting at Rockingham.
Yes.
Well, how did you know that you were up to item 16 and item 15 when you collected the last 2 items at the Rockingham house?
Overruled.
Because we had started with number 1 at Rockingham, and we started with 100 at Bundy.
But, Ms. Mazzola, is it your testimony that even after you put the field notes back into the van, that you had an independent recollection that the next item you were up to was 15?
That was the next item that was up.
Ms. Mazzola, what I'm asking you, though, is whether or not, at this point in the day when you said you were so exhausted and you collected so many different items, that you were able to remember that the next item number available for an item was 15 without referring to your field notes?
Yes.
Isn't it a fact, Ms. Mazzola, that the notations for items 15 and 16 and the times that they were recorded were written contemporaneous to their collection on the afternoon of June 13th?
Items 15 and 16 were the next items up. The times was written the next day.
Isn't it a fact that you recorded on this field document the numbers 15 and 16, the check marks for ID photo, their locations of the items, what they were, and their times on the afternoon of June 13th at about the time that you were actually collecting them?
Asked and answered.
Sustained, referring to 1107.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would like to simply pass this document to the jurors.
Certainly.
How is that done here? Do I have to give it to someone first?
Hand it to juror number 1.
Okay. Just one question first, if I may. May I? Just, okay. Ms. Mazzola, and you can look at your own notes if you want, didn't you in fact give a detailed description of the actual location of each of these items on your field notes?
Objection is to the word detailed.
Overruled.
There's location noted, yes.
And doesn't the location for item 15 not simply say that it's in a garbage can in the bathroom, but it even says what corner of the bathroom the garbage can is in? Isn't that also in the notes?
That is location Mr. Funk told me, yes.
And isn't that the location that Mr. Fung told you on the afternoon of the 13th when you actually wrote it down on that document?
No, I don't believe it was on the afternoon of the 13th.
It's your testimony that Dennis Fung recalled the very next day when he talked to you that that trash can was in the southwest corner of the bathroom?
I'll speak yourself.
Overruled.
I cannot testify to what Mr. Fung remembered or not.
I'm not asking you what he remembered. I'm asking you whether that's when he told it to you for the first time.
I'll speak yourself.
Overruled.
It was the next day.
I'll just take a minute while we're doing that.
like that all the jurors have had the opportunity to review Defense Exhibit 1107. Mr. Neufeld.
Now, Ms. Mazzola, was it after that you and Dennis Fung removed items in 15 and 16 from the trash bag that you logged them in on this field sheet? Is that your testimony?
Yes,
And that was done in the afternoon of June 14th, correct?
it was done on June 14th.
Well, on the morning of June 14th, you said you became aware that the blood vial from Mr. Simpson was in the trash bag, correct?
Correct?
And you certainly knew, ma'am, on the morning of the 14th, that the sneakers had not been in that trash bag. Isn't that right?
Correct?
And you say you saw on the gray envelope, when it was removed from the trash bag, the inscription indicating that Mr. Fung had received the blood vial from Van Adder on June 13th at 5:20 p.m., correct?
I caught a glimpse of it, yes.
Yet, isn't it a fact that you still made out this handwritten list on June 14th with the sneakers identified as item 17, the vial as item 18, and the hair from the glove as item 19?
Overruled.
Yes,
And ma'am, yet on this handwritten sheet, this is the handwritten sheet that you prepared, ma'am?
yes,
With the items 17 being the sneakers, 18 being the blood vial, and 19 being some hair removed from the glove.
correct.
You didn't put any time down on this handwritten sheet for when this blood vial was allegedly obtained, did you?
Sustained. Rephrase the question.
You didn't write down any time next to the item number 18, the blood vial, so the time that you read on an envelope as to the time it was received.
And on this, no.
Yet, the only date, in fact, there's no date either, is there, for next to the item?
No,
The only date on that piece of paper that you wrote is June 14th, isn't that right?
for the tennis shoes, yes.
Excuse me, well, you certainly knew that item 19, the hair, was not collected on the, was not something that you were booking in on the 13th, correct?
Was not collected on the 13th?
Well, the hair was not something that you were separating on the 18th, on the 13th.
That's,
Well, didn't
Sustained. You're rephrasing the question.
you include or keep item 19, the hair from item 9, on a separate page with the sneakers in subsequent reports?
It's irrelevant.
Isn't it a fact that you never wrote down on that sheet that the blood vial was received on June 13th at 17:20 in the afternoon?
on this, no.
And isn't it a fact, ma'am, that the reason you wrote down the vial is number 18 and the sneakers is number 17 is that you never saw a vial come out of the plastic bag in the early morning hours of June 14th?
Sustained. What items do we have on the Elmo now?
Sorry,
What defense, what item is on the Elmo, Mr. 1107?
Now, yesterday, you were asked by Mr. Goldberg whether you had an independent recollection that on June 13th, 10 months ago, you remembered that the trash bag felt a little bit heavier when you carried it down the driveway than it had felt earlier on when you were holding it with items 15 and 16 in it. Isn't that correct?
Sustained.
24643. I think you heard me. Did you hear me, Your Honor? 24643?
What line?
Beginning at line 10.
Proceed.
That's not inconsistent.
I'm not in,
It's hearsay.
Proceed.
it's a foundation question, Your Honor. When you testified yesterday under questioning to Mr. Goldberg, did you testify that, well, you asked this question, did you give this answer? Question. Now, in terms of weight, when you were carrying the bag, did the weight appear to be consistent with only 15, 16, and the little cards? Answer, it appeared to be a little heavier, but at the time I didn't think much about it. You were asked that question, gave that answer yesterday?
Correct.
Okay. And when you testified that way, Mr. Zola, were you saying, in effect, that you were recalling that the bag had a little more heft when you carried it down the driveway, as opposed to the amount of heft that it had when you were holding it in the house?
This state's testimony calls for speculation.
Overruled.
It was a little heavier than what item 15, 16, and the few cards would have had.
Well, when you say, when you testified that way yesterday, and you said it was heavier than what the cards in 15 and 16 would have felt like, were you simply assuming a weight for 15 and 16 in the cards, or were you thinking back to how heavy the bag felt when you held it with 15 and 16 and the little cards before you put it down in the foyer?
Do you understand that question?
I understand the question. I don't know if I was assuming the weight given the few pieces of paper versus remembering exactly how heavy it was when I had it in my hand.
Well, the photo ID cards are pieces of cardboard, are they not? They're index cards that are folded in half?
They're about that weight, yes.
And there were about a half dozen of them, or 8 of them, I think we said yesterday. Is that right?
I don't know if there were 8. There were a few,
Well, there was, item number 4 had an index card, right?
correct?
Item number 5, 6, 7, 8, A, B, and C. Is that right?
Correct,
So approximately a half dozen or so?
approximately.
And those are cardboard.
More like, as you said, index
Index
cards.
cards. Sorry, thank you. And it's your testimony yesterday and today that you could recall that when you carried that bag down the driveway, that it had more heft than it would have with just the folded index cards in it and items 15 and 16. Is that correct?
Yes, it was a little heavier.
With the court's permission, I would simply like to take the staple off of these 3 objects so I can isolate one of them.
Which item is that?
These are the 3 envelopes that are used for demonstrative purposes by the people. It's 163H.
All right, you may unstaple them. Of course, you have the staple remover.
In Brooklyn, we use our key. Mr. Mazzola, I believe you've already testified that the analyzed evidence report, which would hold a blood vial, is the gray envelope, which was part of People's Exhibit 163H. Is that right?
The envelope, yes.
All right. And you, of course, have seen the blood vials that are used to hold reference samples, haven't you, in your work in toxicology?
I've seen those samples, yes.
And I now show you what is Defendant's Exhibit. Looks like there's a number covered up with the strip, but 1112. And I ask you whether or not it appears to be same size and shape that is used as a standard vial for holding blood. Reference samples.
In toxicology, we do not have the ones with the EDTA preservative.
You have a different type of stopper on it,
Correct.
but it's the same size, correct?
It might be a little bit smaller. I'm not positive. I need to compare the two.
May we have a very brief sidebar, Your Honor? I think I can, it's just a question of foundation.
Do you have any other vials available?
This is the problem. May I just approach very briefly on that, Your Honor?
Oh, just talk to Mr. Sheck.
We believe that Dennis Fung has already addressed this issue.
All right, let me see counsel without the
Thank you.
reporter.
there's a stipulation from the people.
Proceed. Lay your foundation. Ms. Mazzola, what brand blood container does the LAPD use? Do you know?
Offhand, I don't know.
Would you recognize one if you saw a picture of it?
To tell you the truth, I don't pay close attention to what brand it is.
Let me show you this picture to see if it refreshes your recollection. And I'm also going to show you, which I guess we're next in order on this one.
Would be 1124. Correct, Mrs. Robinson?
And see if, take a look at that, please. Take a look at the photo.
Do you want to mark the photo as 1125?
Thank you.
Okay?
Would you agree, Ms. Mazzola, that a purple top monojet tube was used to hold Mr. Simpson's blood?
Yes?
And that the monojet tube that was used is the same size and shape as the one you're holding in your right hand?
It appears to be.
Okay. Thank you.
Got it.
And what I've done, Ms. Mazzola, is I put water in this tube, okay?
Okay.
And what I'd like you to do is to place the tube into the envelope. And I'd like you to clasp it.
Okay.
Now, I want you to hold that with your hand to get a sense of how much it weighs.
All right.
Now, is it your testimony, Ms. Mazzola, that you have an independent memory of the additional half the weight generated 10 months ago by the inclusion in the trash bag of an object with that amount of weight?
Overruled.
Also, since that's not evidence that the weight the same.
Overruled.
There was an additional bit of weight in the bag, yes.
But what I'm asking you is it your independent recollection that you could tell that the bag that you carried out to the truck weighed more than the bag when you held it in the kitchen, given the amount of weight that you now sense this object has?
Ask and answer.
Overruled.
Yes, the weight was a little bit more and concentrated in one area.
And it's something that you could actually feel that day?
Yes, it felt a little heavier.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, and then I will be finished with this area of recourse, and I'll get back to finishing the cross, may I just simply pass this envelope around so the jurors can experience the weight?
I don't think you have an adequate foundation at this point, given the testimony of the witness. Demonstration has to most closely be identical, and her testimony is that this is not identical.
Well, there's been testimony that,
No, counsel, I'm
sorry.
me see counsel without the court reporter.
Mazzola, to your knowledge, was anything else in that gray envelope on the morning of June 14th when you saw it at the LAPD SID laboratory other than a test tube with blood?
No foundation for personal knowledge.
Sustain.
Did you at any time, Ms. Mazzola, feel in that envelope any other objects other than a test tube?
Vegas to date.
Oh, well.
From the bit I saw, the envelope, it looked like it was just one tube.
Looked like there was just a small tube in it,
One tube.
and nothing else was in the envelope other than that one tube?
From what I could see, it
That's all I'm
looked
asking.
like a tube.
Okay.
Still no foundation for
I'm-
personal knowledge.
I believe Your Honor now. I'd again now ask if I can pass this around, given her last answer to the jury.
Mr. Goldberg, any objection?
Could I protect the witness on Vadar?
Yes.
Did you look inside the envelope on June the 14th?
No.
So when you said that there only appeared to be one tube in it, what were you basing that opinion on?
From the outline on the envelope.
You did not look inside.
No.
Your Honor, I would ask, and subject to connection,
All right. Ms. Mazzola, does this appear to accurately approximate the weight of the envelope that you have felt or seen with regards to this case?
It's a little hard to tell, Your Honor. Blood, I don't know if blood weighs more than just 100% water or not.
All right, other than that difference, does it feel approximately the same?
I didn't hear the court's question or computers.
Other than that difference, does it feel the same?
It feels a little lighter, but
All right. To your knowledge, were there any other items inside that envelope, any reports or anything like that, at the time that you carried it?
that I know of personally, no.
All right, go ahead.
with the court's permission, I would like to now publish the envelope, let the jury hold it.
You may.
Thank you.
Deputy, may I have that, please? Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, you may.
I'm moving into a whole new area.
Thank you.
You're welcome. On redirect examination, Mr. Goldberg asked you about your memory. Do you remember that?
Sustained.
Well, he asked you about your memory for details. Do you recall those questions that he asked you?
As to what items, counsel?
Do you believe that your memory is satisfactory, Ms. Mazzola?
Argumentative, overbroad.
Sustained.
How would you describe your own memory, Ms. Mazzola?
Memory as to what particular point, counsel?
How would you, well, when you worked at the Kern County Crime Laboratory, did you ever have the experience in which you believed you had inventoried an item only to learn sometime later that you had failed to inventory that item?
Sustained.
It's foundation, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Well, at the Los Angeles Police Department Toxicology Laboratory, did you ever have the experience where you believed you had inventoried an item only to learn later on that you had forgot to do so?
Overruled.
Inventoried in what respect? I don't understand the
Making
question.
an entry in the books or making your own entry on a sample that you received for toxicology analysis?
Still vague and ambiguous.
Overruled.
No.
And of course, from your work in toxicology, you understand the importance of chain of custody. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you understand that it's important to demonstrate the integrity of the evidence has not been undermined. Isn't that right?
Argumentative,
Overruled.
Correct.
And specifically in toxicology, you knew that a police officer or other employee who took urine or drew blood would initial that sample that was eventually tested in your laboratory. That was a standard procedure.
calls for speculation, not relevant.
Overruled.
Initialed the sample itself or
Yes,
what?
initial the sample itself.
I have seen officers send in samples both ways.
Well, either they initial the sample itself or they at least initial the package that it's contained in. Isn't that correct? One or the other.
They fill out the package that the sample is contained in.
With their name on it, correct? The police officer who actually collected the sample?
Not relevant.
Overruled.
Either collected or booked it, yes.
And you testified that on the field reports, there was a box to fill in with the initials of the criminalist who personally collected each item of evidence. Isn't that correct?
Ask and answer.
Sustained.
Would you agree, ma'am, that one reason that it's important to document who collected which swatches and where they were collected is because little swatches all look pretty much alike?
The swatches are similar in size, yes.
And just by looking at a swatch, you can't tell whether it was from a drop at Rockingham or a drop at Bundy.
It's been asked and answered.
Sustained. We've asked these questions already, counsel. Last week.
Well, at the mini academy at LAPD SID, were you ever instructed that items of evidence should be photographed prior to their actual booking?
It's been asked and answered.
It has.
Not with respect to these items, Your Honor, not with respect to the swatches.
It has. You've already gone through the general booking procedures, counsel.
Not
Yes, you have. Proceed.
Well, were you taught that a photograph must be taken before there is any manipulation or alteration of the evidence?
Same question. Proceed, counsel.
Did anyone at the Los Angeles Police Department ever instruct you to have photographs taken of the swatches prior to their booking?
Asked and answered. Relevant.
That question hasn't been asked.
No.
And you did not take the initiative to do that on your own?
Irrelevant.
Overruled.
No.
And so would it be fair to say that there are no photographs to show what the swatches looked like when they were collected, but before they were passed to third parties?
That is correct.
And there was no photograph to indicate the number of swatches that you collected for each stain.
That is correct.
And would it also be correct, ma'am, that there are no written records created by you indicating the number of swatches that you personally collected?
Overruled.
That is correct.
Your field notes only say, quote, red stain, unquote.
Correct.
And the official property reports only mention a, quote, swatch, unquote, in the singular. Isn't that correct?
Overruled.
I did not fill out the property reports. I could look at them and give you an answer.
Well, you were able to testify about the property reports, I believe, during the redirect examination of Mr. Goldberg, weren't you?
Sustained.
Could you please look at the property reports and tell me?
Sure. It is in the singular.
It's in the singular. And in fact, isn't there a box or a column where the person filling out the property report is to indicate the quantity of an item?
That's correct.
And isn't it true that the quantity, namely the number of swatches for each of these bloodstains that you collected, is not filled in with a number?
The boxes are not filled in. That's correct.
So there is no listing of the quantity of swatches that were collected for each of these stains.
Sustained.
Now, even without photographs, would you agree that one way to distinguish one set of swatches from another is to clearly document the coin envelope that the swatches are collected in?
A is to clearly document.
Overruled.
It is necessary to have information on the envelope, yes.
And would you agree that one element of properly documenting the coin envelope the swatches are collected in is to record the initials of the criminalist who's collecting those swatches?
Not necessarily.
Well, would you agree that one reason for initialing the envelope is so it would be perfectly clear that this particular package contained the swatches that you collected as opposed to some other set of anonymous swatches?
The item numbers and DR numbers identify which case and which item number the swatches came from.
And do initials of the criminalist also help to identify it?
Overruled.
They could.
And wouldn't it be fair to say, ma'am, that on the day that you collected the swatches in this place, you didn't even know the DR number, did you?
At that time, no.
The DR number hadn't been bought on June 13th, had it?
I don't know when it had been bought.
Well, if you knew that there was testimony that it was not bought until the 16th of June,
Sustained. All right, council, let's take our break at this point. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a 15-minute recess. Please remember all of my admonitions to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves, form any opinions about the case, conduct any deliberations on the matter, or allow anybody to communicate with you. We'll take a 15-minute recess, and council, once you organize your exhibits for the next phase. All right, Ms. Mazzola, you may step down.
and if you could, just so the jury can see it, I'm looking now at People's Exhibit 163E, which is a coin envelope containing some plastic bags, a white paper bindle, and inside the bindle, is there anything inside the bindle, ma'am?
There are some white swatches.
Okay. And are those the two white swatches that I've now put on the coin envelope?
It looks more like 3. There's one on top of that one.
Okay. They sometimes get stuck together?
Sometimes.
All right. With the court's permission, I'm not going to pass them around. I just like to hold them up in front of the jury.
I don't know how effective that's going to be since they're Don't anybody sneeze.
And you would agree, Ms. Mazzola, that without proper documentation, none of these swatches in these plastic bags can easily get mixed up?
Overruled. Jury can draw their own conclusions.
Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Would you agree that without proper documentation, it's easier for someone to tamper with them, too?
I don't follow that question.
All right. Now, the next thing you did with the plastic bag was to put it into a clean coin envelope at the scene. Is that right?
Correct?
And just as the swatches in the plastic bags all look pretty much alike, so do the coin envelopes, don't they?
Yes.
And so it is the standard practice at the Los Angeles Police Department to write identifying information on each coin envelope at the scene. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And that is done so that one envelope and its contents can be distinguished from another.
Correct.
And would you agree, ma'am, that putting one's initials on the coin envelope at the scene is one way to identify a piece of evidence?
Overruled. But we've pretty much been through this procedure.
I haven't been through this procedure, this witness. I
Well, counsel, the jury already knows about this procedure.
think some-
Proceed.
Placing one's initials alone on a coin envelope would not help distinguish it from another.
But placing one's initials in conjunction with placing the item number on the envelope will.
The item number is more important, yes.
But placing one's initials also enhance that identification process, correct?
Sustained.
Well, Ms. Mazzola, would you agree that, for instance, in this case, would you agree, Ms. Mazzola, that photo ID numbers can be used again and again at different crime scenes and different investigations?
Yes.
And so there could be more than 2 coin envelopes in the laboratory having the same number, such as 27 or 35 or 110.
Yes.
And so, in addition to placing the photo ID number and item number on a coin envelope, placing the initials of the person who collected that item on the envelope is an additional way to individualize the envelope, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. And isn't it a standard practice of the Los Angeles Police Department to retain for trial purposes the original coin envelopes used at the crime scene?
I don't know if that is a standard practice or not. I'm not familiar with that.
Well, did you ever testify as a witness in a toxicology case?
Yes.
And you were given a vial in an envelope?
Yes.
And when you would testify in court, was that same envelope retained and produced in court?
Sustained.
Would you agree that retention of the original documented coin envelope is one way to document the beginning of chain of custody?
Asked and answered and irrelevant.
Overruled.
Yes.
Now, on direct examination, Ms. Mazzola, by Mr. Goldberg, you denied personally putting your initials on the coin envelopes for the bloodstains that you personally collected at Rockingham and Bundy. Is that correct?
Misstates the evidence.
Overruled.
I believe I said something to that effect.
On August 23rd, 1994, when you were under oath, didn't you swear that for each bloodstain that you collected at Rockingham, you personally put your initials on the coin envelope?
Argument that was phrased in that outset.
Sustained.
On August 23rd, 1994, referring to page 705,
Also, I think this has been asked and answered.
What? What
I-
line, counsel? What line, counsel?
I'm sorry. Beginning at line 2 and ending at line 15.
Which page?
705.
All right, line 2 to 15.
Thank you. On August 23rd, when you testified under oath, were you asked these questions and did you give these answers, Ms. Mazzola? Question. When you place the plastic into the coin envelope, you said you make a notation on the coin envelope, namely the photo number at that point as well? Answer. It is labeled the photo item number. Question. Do you initial the plastic bag yourself? Answer. The coin envelope is initialed. Question. By you? Answer. That is correct. Question. And in each of these instances where you collected the stain, you personally initialed the envelope? Answer. I collected the stain. It was initialed by me. Did you give those answers to those questions under oath on August 23rd, 1994?
Yes.
Now, Your Honor, also page 768, lines 16 through 18.
Proceed.
And then again, on page 768, Ms. Mazzola, at the same hearing on August 23rd, 1994, where you asked this question, did you give this answer? Question. Well, I'm sorry. You know the coin envelopes were initialed by you, correct? Answer. Correct. Did you give that answer to that question on August 23rd?
I believe so.
Now, your initials would be what, AM? Is that correct?
Yes.
And when Dennis Fung would initial an envelope or item, he would initial it DF?
Yes.
So it was your sworn testimony on August 23rd that you, and not Fung, initialed the coin envelopes for the stains that you personally collected.
Overruled.
At that time, I believe I had initialed them, yes.
And at that time, ma'am, on August 23rd, it was just 2 months after you had actually gone out and collected the stains in this case. Is that right?
Approximately 2 months, yes.
All right. And would you, since August 23rd, have you been involved in other crime scene investigations?
Yes.
Approximately how many?
Haven't we gone through this already?
I have. It's just a foundation to get into the next question, Your Honor.
Well, then ask the next question.
Okay. Isn't it a fact, Ms. Mazzola, that this crime scene on June 13th was your very first one where you were the primary collector of bloodstain evidence?
We've asked that question as well.
I understand. There's a few of these that simply lead into the next point, Your Honor.
Well, if we've
I
asked
may.
them already, let's proceed to what's new.
Okay. Well, Ms. Mazzola, between June 13th and August 23rd, isn't it a fact that you didn't do any other crime scenes?
I don't recall if I had or not.
All right. And wouldn't you agree, ma'am, that since this was your very first crime scene, where you were the primary collector of evidence, that your recollection of what transpired is more vivid than it is after doing many more crime scenes in the interim?
Assumes facts, not the evidence, and it's also unintelligible.
Overruled. Do you understand the question?
Not really.
Does this particular event stick out in your mind in any way because it was your first major crime scene that you collected the evidence?
Doesn't stick out in a major way, no.
Proceed.
The fact that it was your very first crime scene, Ms. Mazzola, and it was a case involving such notoriety, isn't it more vivid in your mind than are the other crime scenes that you have done in the interim?
It states the testimony is the first crime scene.
No,
Overruled. You can
Well, it was not my first crime scene, and it is just another scene.
Ms. Mazzola, this was just another scene for you?
All right, counsel, we've gone over and over
Ms.
and
Mazzola,
over.
I'm sorry. It was your first crime scene, though, where you were the primary collector of blood evidence, wasn't it?
This is the 5th time we're asking this question, counsel.
All right. When you testified on August 23rd, Ms. Mazzola, you didn't first discuss your testimony with your superior, Mrs. Kessler, did you?
No,
But since August 23rd, you have discussed your involvement in this case in the presence of Ms. Kessler, haven't you?
Sustained.
Before you testified on August 23rd, you hadn't discussed this testimony with the district attorneys, had you? He went on to it, into it on redirect, Your Honor.
Counsel, that doesn't mean that we have to hear it for the 3rd time.
Okay.
Are you about to finish with your cross-examination? Do you have anything new?
Yes, I do, Your Honor.
All right, because the cross-examination is about to end.
At any time during the last 10 months, Ms. Mazzola, did your colleagues at SID tell you it's time to close ranks because they're under attack?
no,
Are you aware as you sit here today that any of your colleagues have been criticized for the way they conducted themselves in this case?
Overruled. Overruled.
some of them have been talked about, yes.
Well, not just talked about, are you aware they've been criticized?
That's irrelevant.
Are you aware, Ms. Mazzola, as you sit here today, that there have been reports in the media that the defense, in this case, has criticized the SID where you work and the manner in which evidence was collected in this case?
Sustained. Jury is to disregard the implication of the question.
When was the first time that you reviewed your transcript of the testimony of August 23rd?
Maybe it's a month or so ago, maybe a little more. I'm not exactly sure when.
And did your supervisors at SID tell you that there was a big problem with your sworn testimony of August 23rd, that you personally put your initials on every coin envelope for every stain that you collected on June 13th?
No,
Did the prosecutors tell you there was a problem with your August 23rd testimony on that point?
no,
When did the prosecutors or SID supervisors first show you what they claimed were the original coin envelopes from June 13th?
I saw pictures of the coin envelopes at the DA's office.
And when was that?
Probably a month or less ago.
And when you looked at those coin envelopes at that time, when you looked at the photographs of those coin envelopes at that time, did you experience a moment of panic when you didn't see your initials on those coin envelopes?
Sustained.
How did you feel when you saw those photographs of the coin envelopes that didn't have your initials on them?
Well, it assumes a fact, not an evidence.
Subject to connection with the very next question.
Proceed. How did you feel when you saw the photographs?
I didn't feel anything different.
Proceed.
Well, there's these be marked for identification, Your Honor. They are one,
I'd
two.
like to object to those being introduced based upon our prior conversations. They still have biological evidence in them.
All right, we'll mark them by reference. Do we have photographs of them as well?
I don't have photographs of all of them now.
I thought we probably do.
All right. We'll mark them by reference because the storage will remain with the LAPD. However, you may mark them by reference for the purpose of this hearing.
Should we mark them collectively as one exhibit? Next in order.
I don't know, because I think that we are going to need to refer to them individually when we get to the testing. So unfortunately, I think we need to individually mark each one of these. Mr. Goldberg, do you agree with that?
Well, Your Honor, what we had intended to do, I don't know whether you wanted me to discuss this in open court, is simply refer to them by their item numbers. And that's the way everything would be connected up.
So we'll have a third numbering system in this case, item number coin envelopes?
Well, I don't know.
Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, but it's an evidentiary item number system as opposed to an exhibit
I
item
agree.
number system.
since we've been referring that confusingly as so, let's do that. Mrs. Robertson will start a third list, coin envelopes by item number. All right? And council will both sides stipulate that the coin number, item number, will be as written on the coin envelope for the purposes of the record. That'll make it simpler.
Yes, and
All right, let's do it that way. Proceed.
I also prefer the stipulation that in fact these are the original coin envelopes.
Well, I assume as soon as you start with the witness, we'll get that. Proceed.
Well, I'm going to show you then coin envelopes with the following numbers on them. 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 12, and 14. I'd like you to take a look at them, please.
All right, these are the Rockingham item numbers.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Ms. Mazzola, what I'd like you to do is at this time collect from that pile the original coin envelopes for the Rockingham samples that you testified to on August 23rd you had put your initials on.
I reject that question on the grounds that it's unintelligible.
Sustained.